Here's a sneak peek from today's episode.
The difference between planning and strategy. The strategy is so important. Understanding like the fundamental issue that we want to address, the challenges we want to address, who's the audience, what's going to resonate with them, and how are we going to talk to them? And then cascading down from there, what does that look like? How do we maintain that same voice, that same message across all of these different channels that need different types of content?
Welcome to the Content Amplified podcast, brought to you by Masset. Our goal is to help you get more from your marketing content. Each episode is a 10 to 15 minute interview with industry experts that share amazing insights to help you squeeze as much juice from your content as you possibly can. Here's today's interview.
Welcome back to another episode of Content Amplified. Today I'm joined by Becca and Aaron. Welcome both of you to the show.
Thanks, Ben.
I love it when we have multiple people on the podcast. It makes for a fun, engaging conversation, and I love hearing multiple points of view. So thank you both for coming on, sharing your opinions. And before we dive in, let's get to know you both. Let's know about your background, your history, kind of catch us up to date on your career. And then also we love to ask, what do you love about content and marketing? So Becca, let's start with you, and maybe we'll go to Aaron after that, and would love to get to know you.
Great. Thanks, Ben. So I'm Becca Smith. I'm the Senior Vice President of Marketing and Strategy for Electric Kite, which is a digital agency headquartered in Philly, but we've got people all over the world. I've been in marketing now for about a decade. I've also been a consultant. I've worked for a nonprofit. So my experience has run the gamut of a number of different industries and spaces. What I love about marketing and content together is the ability to connect with audiences through storytelling. Our agency works with a lot of nonprofit organizations, higher education institutions, startups, and B2B businesses that are kind of targeting new customers. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity to connect with people in a meaningful way through the stories that those organizations tell.
I love it. I love it. That's great. Aaron, let's hear from you.
Yeah, well, Becca took all my great talking points about what I like about content and marketing. Hi, Aaron Stern. I'm the Senior Director of Content here at Electric Kite. I come from a journalism background originally. I was a newspaper reporter. Worked in media for a while, and before making my way into marketing. And what I like about content and marketing, Becca, I love being able to tell stories and being able to reach people in creative ways. And it's always most exciting when you're working kind of on behalf of a brand or bringing a message that really has something useful to say to people, something that will be helpful or entertaining, or ideally some combination of both to them. That's going to help them in some way, whether that's doing their job better in a B2B space or kind of help them in their personal lives in some way and more of a consumer space. So that to me is what I really like about working in content.
I love it. I love it. And again, thank you both for coming on today. What we're going to discuss today is the difference between content strategy and content planning. Just putting this out to both of you, what's kind of the difference? Like, why does this matter? I'm guessing I, not on purpose, but probably have interchanged those two terms. What really is the difference, and why does it matter?
Great question. The difference is simply whether or not you kind of do research ahead of time and whether or not what you're doing is rooted in research and a research-driven approach. So I saw someone's great post on LinkedIn about this last week, and I'll drop the link so we can put it in the show notes. But content planning is when you just kind of have some hunches, or you're going to create content. You're not necessarily sure entirely why or who it's going to reach, or you might not even have KPIs that you have in mind. But you're going to create content because that's what you think you should be doing. And so you go off and you start creating content, and you kind of see how it works and how it goes. Content strategy is when you have done all of your research ahead of time. So you understand your audience, you understand your competitors, you understand the landscape. You know what kinds of content you're going to create, how you're going to create it, what you want your audience to do, what you want them to think and feel from interacting with your brand. And then you go forward and create content in a purposeful way that way. It's the difference between having done research and taking a research-driven approach or not.
I love it. Very cool. Really, when we're looking at this, and I love that definition, doing the research, doing the homework, understanding your audience, I think that's a great definition. So when we're looking at it, how do you really get feedback? It sounds like there's an opportunity when you're creating content that you need to constantly be measuring and understanding and improving. How do you do that? Like, content is one of the hardest things to track, hardest things to understand. How do you recommend actually understanding, is my strategy working or not?
Yeah, first and foremost, you're going to go back to your data and see how people are interacting with the content. Is the way that you take an individual piece of content and kind of slice it up and project it across all the different spaces an audience can engage with it working? Are people seeing the content? Are they opening your newsletters? Are they reading your newsletters? Is it reaching people through what you can measure on impressions on social? Are they engaging with it when they see it there? Are they going back to the original source of probably that core piece of content that you have distributed outward? And so you do this on an ongoing basis and make your kind of micro adjustments as you're going along. But then periodically, you also have to take a step back and do a little bit of a holistic assessment. We run an editorial publication called Volt, which is editorial publication for higher ed marketers and communications leaders. And we've been publishing it for about 5 years. We've made, adjustments along the way. But this summer, we went back and we kind of took a look at everything that happened over the last year. What types of content were people engaging with? What were they not? What were the commonalities between them? And we went and we made several adjustments to our editorial strategy. We changed how we do our images. We changed how we do our headlines. We made some revisions to the types of topics we talk about and when we talk about them. And since we did that, we've seen a significant increase in traffic, in engagement. One nice finding has been that SEO is not dead yet. We've been publishing content that is ranking right away and very high in SEO. And we took that approach across our social channels too. And so it's really important to do that sometimes, because you can make your little changes in the kind of small picture, but you also have to sometimes take a step back and be very critical about what you're doing and seeing how it's working and being okay with making significant changes.
And I think another thing that we've done that Aaron and I have talked about is, and we've been encouraging clients towards, is looking for ways to build communities. And I know that sounds a little daunting, but it doesn't have to be a large community. It's just an engaged audience, people that are really resonant with your brand, your product, what it is that you're offering. And there's a two-way conversation going. So in that two-way conversation, you're able to hear what's important to them, what they're thinking about, how they're reacting to what you're putting out, and then adapt the content that you're creating to meet some of those needs and to answer some of those questions and to fill some of the gaps that people feel like they might be experiencing. And so we've recommended that. I know that we do that ourselves with the publication, the editorial publication that Aaron just mentioned, Volt. We've recommended that for clients and find that kind of community building is a really helpful way to support an environment where audience needs are changing pretty quickly in some spaces.
Anytime you're working in a B2B space, you have a great chance to create and or be a part of a community, right? Because if you're in B2B marketing, you are essentially in a cohort of people who are looking for ways to improve how they do what they do. And you can always be a part of that. And it's not always just about creating content that people engage with. It's about being part of that community and sometimes being okay with they're not going to come back to our content, but we're facilitating a conversation and we're facilitating connections. And that's a really important part of kind of being a part of that community and growing your brand in a community like that.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. So Becca, I'm going to throw you a little bit of a curveball. I apologize. I didn't prep you for this question in any way, shape, or form. So this is going to be a raw, good stuff. So in your role, you're balancing a lot of different things, right? You have to really focus on accomplishing all of marketing's missions and everything you're trying to do, how that lines up with the company's goals and everything you're trying to accomplish. How do you tie content to all of the different levers that you oversee in all the different areas? Because content's sometimes a vague thing, right? Like it can be all encompassing across the board. How do you tie your strategy into the overall marketing strategy and make sure that content is accessible to all of your different channels in every area that you're working on?
Mm-hmm. Well, I work a lot with Aaron, who's great, and that's amazing. But I think that's an excellent point. So in my role, to be specific, I am the one that would be part of setting the overall strategy for the client. So all of the different channels that they are using to get their message out. And then I oversee our teams that do paid media, analytics, CRM marketing, email marketing. And so for all of those things, I mean, content touches all of those when it comes to paid media, what we're putting on, say, paid social, for instance, what's going out into email. Content is a very important part of that. And so what I think is critical to start with, and Aaron talked about this in the beginning, is really understanding the audience first. If we can understand who the audience is, what their problem is, what's the fundamental problem and challenge they're trying to solve. It's like, marketing strategy 101. I also teach marketing strategy too. So it's kind of going back to those basics. Who is the audience? What are the pain points that they're experiencing? And then how do we position the content that we're developing that's going to resonate with them in a way that they feel like they're deriving value, they're solving a problem, they're learning something new as it relates to whatever it is they're trying to solve. So we'll sit with the client, we'll get that excellent audience research, some secondary research, we'll understand what competitors are saying about themselves. And then Aaron's team does a great job of coming up with the messaging that then is threaded throughout all the different types of content that we'll create. So it could be content that's going on the website, it could be organic social content. In my case, we're looking at how we want to put content into paid media and what it looks like differently from doing, TikTok to stories to maybe more traditional Facebook advertising to LinkedIn advertising. How do we take that message and create pieces of content that are resonant with those platforms? And that's an important part of what it is that we do as well. So back to kind of what Aaron was saying in the beginning, when it comes to the difference between planning and strategy, the strategy is so important. Understanding like the fundamental issue that we want to address, the challenges we want to address, who's the audience, what's going to resonate with them, and how are we going to talk to them? And then cascading down from there, what does that look like? How do we maintain that same voice, that same message across all of these different channels that need different types of content?
I love it. So question for both of you this time around. With ChatGPT and AI, there is a lot of content that is coming out the gates. I mean, I've even looked at it like 600x increase in the amount of content being published online. What is your strategy doing to actually let people view and have your content stand out in just a marketplace that's getting full of stuff? Like how do you both view that?
It's a challenge, increasing challenge to stand out. So there's so much content out there. And I think there's some hand-wringing concern around generative AI and that being the place that people are getting answers instead of actually going to content. And I'll start by saying, just reiterating what I said before, it largely starts with understanding the audience and what their needs are. I know Aaron's did a lot of work in this area and looking at AI as it relates to content. I'm sure you have thoughts to add too.
Yeah, it's tough, right? There's so much content. So how do you make your content stand out? First and foremost, your best friend is to have a strong brand and clear communications pillars. And then pulling those things, right? Once you have a good identity, once you have a clear purpose, pulling those things into your content. So that's creating content that stands out through its creativity, that's using your proprietary data, that's using your specific learnings and perspectives, and pulling all of that into a package that goes beyond just what you're going to get from generative AI as far as how do I do this? Why do I do that? But really putting that into a package that presents your brand, presents it authentically, gives something that nobody else has, which is your perspective, which is your data and that experience that you have. And then it really just goes back to basics, right? Like, would you read this? Would you watch this? And if the answer is yes, then you do your best to make sure that people can find it, right? Search is not dead, like I alluded to before. It's, of course, changing. Traditional SEO is still relevant, and it's still going to be relevant. It's going to change in how relevant it is, right? Inbound marketing isn't like, you don't want to be hanging your hat on that anymore, but it is still relevant. And these tools are getting better at how they reference and link out to publishers. I think Perplexity, for instance, does a fantastic job. Like, do a search on there, you get the information you need, you get lots of links. I mean, I click through on tons. I click through on way more things that I will actually, in any given search I do in Perplexity, than I ever would do in Google. And, that's my own experience. But I do think that the way that they really present the findings and present the source material is really useful. But, you're also going to start to look beyond standard metrics of traffic to individual content. You're going to care more about signs of overall brand visibility. So that's traffic to your homepage, that's sign up to your newsletter, that's engagement within your newsletter. It's a variety of things, but really all comes back to you still have to create good content. In fact, it matters more than ever that the content is really good, because the algorithms, whether you call them AI or whether you call them search, are smarter than ever, and they reward quality content that is really driven to answering not just one specific question, but answering a question kind of holistically. And then also, once people are there, you need to present them with something that is distinctively yours that they won't really see anywhere else. And that's more important than ever right now.
I love that. Yeah, the unique point of view is something that I think a lot of people really under index on. And I love the first party data, the understanding your audience, everything you both said. This is amazing. I'm sure the conversation could go on for a lot longer, but we like to keep these episodes short, everyone's daily dose of marketing knowledge. So we're going to have to cut it off there. But Aaron and Becca, thank you so much for your insights. If anyone wants to continue the conversation and reach out online, how and where can they find you both?
They could find us, I suppose, at our company-wide website, which is electrickite.com. And my email is bsmith@electrickite.com.
My email is astern@electrickite.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, Aaron Stern. It might be Aaron D. Stern in the URL. I'm not sure. And I don't know, maybe Blue Sky soon. People seem to be liking Blue Sky, speaking of community. Not yet for me. So yeah, I would say LinkedIn is a great way, or email.
I love it. And we will link to both of your profiles in the show notes for everyone listening. It's really easy to find you both. Again, thank you so much for the time and insights today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having us. It's been really fun.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it. This was great.
Thank you for listening to the Content Amplified podcast. Please subscribe and leave us a review. And for additional ways to get more out of your content, visit our website at getmasset.com. That's getmasset.com. And tune in next time to the Content Amplified podcast.